Welcome to Movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take good care. Snowpiercer is the name of the movie. Please like and subscribe for every update. In 2014, humans destroyed the Earth's atmosphere and caused global warming. To solve this problem, scientists are creating artificial cooling substances that can be dispersed into the air. Heat will decrease, but it will also cause a new ice age on Earth. Fortunately, a brilliant scientist named Wilford built a train equipped with a perpetual motion engine that could travel continuously around the world. The few people left on Earth now live on trains, and those who dare to venture outside instantly freeze to death. Unfortunately, class distinctions also exist in this small society, and the vehicles are organized accordingly. In the front he seats 4,444 upper-class people, in the back economy class, and in the back poor people. 17 years later, the guards brought food for the poor consisting of nasty protein chunks. Everyone must sit down to receive it, but Curtis wouldn't sit down until the security guard threatened to shoot him. Curtis explained to his friend Edgar that he counted the number of doors to sneak onto the train. The guard asks if there are any experienced violinists in the group, and an elderly couple who played in the Boston Symphony Orchestra volunteer. The guards try to take Gerald with them, as they only need the musicians, but Gerald refuses to take his wife and leave. This causes the guard to beat the woman and break her hand before dragging Gerald away. Later, Curtis visits Tanya and her son Timmy and asks the boy to replace the protein block. Cutting open the new pad, Curtis finds a small capsule with a message inside and takes it to Gilliam, a one-armed old man sitting next to Wilford's logo on the wall. The message mentions the name of a security expert from the prison's department, Nam. Curtis wants to find him to help the revolution, and Gilliam helps Curtis explore their options. Later, while everyone is sleeping, several guards and Wilford's assistant Claude arrive and begin measuring the heights of all the children with tape measures. Suddenly Claude approaches Tanya and moves his skirt to find Timmy hiding there. Timmy tries to run away as her mother screams. However, the guards capture Timmy and beat his girlfriend, Tanya, to silence her. After a few more measurements, Claude takes Timmy and Andrew's son Andy. Devastated, Andrew screamed and threw his shoe at Claude, who quickly caught him. Shortly after, young Franco and old Franco put a watch around Andrew's neck and put his arm through a hole in the wall, whereupon Andrew felt sub-zero temperatures and screamed in pain. Minister Mason arrives and gives a long speech reprimanding the passengers for their misbehavior. She puts the throne shoe on Andrew's head, and she says that things on the train must follow a certain order. Mason then calls Wilford and he asks him to give a speech as well, but Wilford does not respond. The Francos took Andrew's completely frozen arm and punished him by smashing it with a giant hammer. A few days later, the poor people start working hard to create tools that will help the revolution. Curtis also receives several crowns. These are small blocks made from industrial waste that addicts use to kick. However, they are also highly flammable. He can't help but think that Mason had called the guards' weapons useless weapons and suspected that they had run out of bullets in the last mutiny. While everyone is at work, the artists of the group draw pictures of all the important moments and give Andre and Tanya a portrait of the child. One day, the alarm suddenly went off and everyone hurried to get in line with the security guard. Their equipment is ready and they start screaming in protest at the protein blocks to distract them. As the security guard grabbed the old man and threatened to shoot him, Curtis ran forward and put the gun to the old man's head instead. When the guard pulls the trigger, nothing happens and Edgar yells that his gun is unloaded, causing chaos. The device turns out to be a giant train made of pipes on wheels, and the group pushes their way through the next compartment while Curtis rides it. A fierce battle ensues between the guards and the rebels, but without weapons the rebels can easily overwhelm them. Suddenly, a giant guard tries to block their way, but Gray jumps on him and quickly kills him, stealing the key in the process. The rebels then easily reach the prison van, which is a section on the wall. Using the key, they manage to free Nam, a security expert, but Nam seems quite stunned as he is an addict. Retrieving a translation device from the wall, Curtis explains that he needs help passing through the door of the following vehicle and that he can pay Nam in crowns. Nam smokes a cigarette while thinking about this, but everyone is shocked as cigarettes haven't existed for over 10 years. Little Chan uses the opportunity to steal Nam's matches. After much deliberation, Nam throws away the cigarette and everyone starts fighting over it, but Nam joins in the fight until Curtis pulls him out. Nam reveals that he took the key and opens another compartment containing his daughter Yona, who is also an addict. Nam agrees to help if they both get the crown door by door. Curtis accepts the deal, so Nam begins repairing the door wire. After Yona announces that there is no one on the other side, Nam opens the door and the group finds it empty. When someone opens a window, everyone is shocked to see sunlight again for the first time in almost 20 years. The outside world is covered in snow and every city is completely frozen. Nam begins work on the door next door, and just before she opens the door, Yona says she's running and the group is surprised to see Paul, a former member of the group, jumping up and down like crazy. Nothing like this had ever happened before, so they looked around and realized that these were machines that made protein blocks. Paul was brought here to make his blocks, which drove him crazy. Curtis looks into the machine and is horrified to see that the material used to make the protein blocks is cockroaches. Suddenly, he finds another capsule on the floor and asks Paul about it, but he doesn't know who sent it and just put it in his food. When Gilliam opens it, he sees the word water, and Paul tells him that the water supply is a few car rides away. If they can control the water, they can control the negotiations. While Nam was working on opening the next door, Curtis speaks with Jonah and learns that she was born on the train. Curtis came from outside, but he doesn't remember anything until he got on the train. Curtis also suspects Jonah of her clairvoyance, which is why she sees the door and yells, "Don't open it." Unfortunately, it's too late. The door opens, revealing a room full of masked people, men armed with axes. As a threat, they lift the fish and remove its internal organs. Refusing to be intimidated, the rebels move forward and begin a chaotic battle. Both sides start losing people quickly as they brutally kill each other and blood splatters all over the car. Edgar and Curtis try to get past the crows while killing many masked men, but suddenly Curtis slips on his foot on the fish. The man tries to kill him as he lies on the ground, but Edgar jumps on him in the nick of time and kills him. There are also masked men and several security guards in front of the car, who tell them they are about to cross the bridge. The men then begin a countdown and, as the train arrives at the bridge, shout Happy New Year. Unfortunately, since last year, several ice banks have formed on the bridge. As the train passes, it shakes like crazy and everyone falls to the ground except for Yona and Nam, who are looking out the window at the cliff below. Finally, the guard announces that they have crossed the bridge, and everyone stands up to fight again, but is interrupted when Mason, Franco, and the others get into their cars. She scolds the rebels for not being grateful for the shelter and food Wilford has given them over the years, and tells them that 74% of the rebels will be killed. Enraged, Curtis throws an axe at her face, but is blocked. Suddenly, Mason holds up his binoculars and his men don special masks, and Jonah Curtis explains that a long tunnel is approaching. As the train enters the tunnel, the interior becomes dark, but the guards are still visible thanks to special masks. The rebels are quickly overwhelmed and die one by one, but Mason enjoys the slaughter as if it were a play. As the rebels die one by one, Curtis remembers something and yells for Chan to fire. Chan uses stolen matches to light a torch, and soon he and Andrew lead a group of rebels with many torches into a dark car. With the help of fire, the rebels regained the upper hand. Gray then seized the officer and threatened to kill him if the enemy did not surrender. Mason doesn't care about lower-level employees, so Gray kills him and continues the fight by stabbing Mason in the leg with a knife. Curtis sees his chance and runs to Mason, but notices that young Franco has captured Edgar. For a moment, Curtis didn't know what to do, but in the end he chose the needs of many people and ran off to capture Mason while Franco killed Edgar. Curtis captures Mason and orders everyone to stop fighting. Young Franco attempts to kill Curtis, but Jonah comes out of hiding and impales him with a metal rod. After the group captured old man Franco, they washed away the blood with running water in a neighboring car. Tanya and Andrew try to hurt Mason into talking, but all Mason knows is that the children are being taken to Wilford. Now it's Curtis' turn to threaten her and tell her he can turn off her water. But Mason laughed and explained that the water was coming from the front of the train and was snow and ice that was breaking up as the train was moving. Curtis tries to kill her, but Mason convinces him to take her with him since he can guarantee safe passage. That night, the group decides to rest, but Curtis and Gilliam stay awake discussing next steps. Gilliam doesn't like that so many people are already dead, so Curtis volunteers to continue acting alone while Gilliam watches over the group and the prisoners. Gilliam agrees after seeing the scar on Curtis' arm. The next morning, Curtis walks with Andrew, Tanya, Nam, Gray, Jonah, and Mason, who is always handcuffed. The first car they drive into is a greenhouse where fruits and vegetables are grown for the upper class. Nam gives Yona some soil that she has never touched before, but Yona is surprised by the insect. The next vehicle is a giant aquarium where Mason serves sushi to the group. During this migration, the fish is eaten only twice a year, since it is necessary to maintain the balance of the ecosystem. Mason also tries to eat sushi, but Curtis stops him and makes him eat a protein block instead. She enjoys her own face, because she knows what's inside her. As I passed the butcher's truck, I found a classroom full of screaming children. Tanya and Andrew immediately ask about the children based on the pictures, but one boy only knows that they were taken by the train. The teacher plays a propaganda-filled video to teach the children that Wilford is a benevolent savior. The kids like it and are rooting for the leader. The teacher then plays an instrument and sings a song, teaching the children that if the train stops, they will freeze to death. At that moment, they pass a spot in the landscape where 7 people once tried to escape 15 years ago, their bodies now frozen in the snow as statues. Just then, a man arrives with a cart full of warm New Year eggs. Both the children and the rebels grab the eggs and eat them, while Gerald also appears and plays the violin for them. After Tanya notices how much Gerald has changed since he took this job, Curtis finds a capsule inside the egg with the message blood written on it. When the cart driver arrives at another car, he and his teacher take a gun from a pile of eggs and begin shooting. They all run for cover, but sadly the teacher kills Andrew before Gray can finish her off with a knife. Mason tries to shoot Curtis, but he knocks the gun out of her hand just as the live footage is played on the TV in her classroom. The wagon driver kills all the rebels, and old Franco can shoot Gilliam. Grieved, Curtis takes revenge by killing Mason. The group moves on and finds stylish people in the following vehicle using all sorts of services, including a doctor, a tailor, and a beauty salon. As they cross the dining room, Franco also begins to move and notices that his train has turned and his car and the rebels' car are next to each other. Franco immediately opened fire and Curtis fired back, but both missed all their bullets until they ran out of bullets. While reloading the bullet, Nam spots a snowflake coming in through the bullet hole, which he uses as a clue. Franco and Curtis then fire again, but to no avail, so they decide to continue. The group passes through the spa and reaches the sauna, where they hide in a stable before Franco and two guards catch up to them. Franco opens the booth and kills the high-class passenger, as well as the security guard who called him in. At that moment, Gray jumps out, killing the other guards and stabbing Franco in the shoulder. Then a fight breaks out. As the two fight, Curtis comes out and shoots Franco, but is unable to aim without hurting Gray. When Franco knocked Gray unconscious, Curtis finally fired, but Franco fired back, wounding Curtis in his arm. Tanya also tries to attack Franco, but Franco easily shoots her down. Curtis then begins fighting Franco in hand-to-hand combat, and after much fighting, Franco knocks Curtis unconscious. Franco tries to stab Curtis, but Gray stops him. This time Franco quickly overpowers him and stabs him in the chest, killing him. As Franco opens another stall, he notices Nam hiding behind a woman and a new fight breaks out. As Nam pushes Franco to the ground and begins strangling him, Jonah comes out and grabs a knife and kills him. However, Nam doesn't want her to be killed, so he lets her drop the knife, and when Curtis wakes up, he grabs the knife and stabs Franco in the side. Curtis then rushes in to check on Tanya. Tanya wants to see Timmy's picture one more time before he dies. The group continues on the road, passing a car where a raucous party filled with alcohol and decadence is being held, followed by a car with a pit full of addicts. Nam and Yona use this opportunity to steal the furs and booze. Then, after passing the computer car and crossing the bridge, you will finally arrive at Wilford's vault door. When Yona passes out from drinking too much, Curtis tells Nam to open the door. Nam demands more crowns and Curtis loses his mind and starts knocking on the door. Nam fights him to calm him down and then gives him the last cigarette in the world, which Curtis enjoys while telling his story. For the first few days on the train, the poor had to eat weak food, and babies were the tastiest. Curtis killed his mother and almost killed baby Edgar, but Gilliam offered his arm in his place. Soon everyone started imitating him, but Curtis had a scar on his arm from trying and failing. A few days later, a security guard came by with a protein block. In response, Nam confesses that he had been stocking up on Crown Oil as it is flammable, so he made a bomb to blow up the door. For the past 10 years, every New Year, Nam looked outside and saw signs that the ice was melting, so he thought he could escape and survive. Suddenly the door opens and Claude comes out and shoots Nam and takes the Chronor bomb before telling Curtis that Wilford has invited him to dinner. Curtis comes in and eventually meets Wilford, who explains that he is the first person to walk the entire length of this train, as Curtis has never been to the back end. Wilford then talks about the importance of ecological balance, which he planned years because natural selection would take too long. It turns out that he and Gilliam had been working together all along, planning a fake revolution to overthrow the people. Curtis should have lost a few cars behind him, but he was lucky. To restore his balance, Wilford calls Eggman and he orders him to kill all the poor people left behind, but leave 18 people behind to celebrate their 18th birthday. Screams and gunshots are heard from the phone, and Curtis realizes that the logo Gilliam was sitting next to is a private phone. Meanwhile, Franco wakes up in the sauna and pulls out a knife. Yona and Nam also wake up in front of Wilford's car, but notice that one of the partygoers has attacked them. Nam quickly stops him and attempts to kill him by forcing him into the train's machinery, but more angry partygoers arrive. To hold them back, Nam blocks the bridge and tells Yona to open the door. Returning to Wilford, he decides to take Curtis to the locomotive and have some alone time, something he hasn't had since arriving on the train. When Wilford brings him the last capsule with the message train, Curtis is overwhelmed and falls to his knees crying. Wilford wants Curtis to be the leader in his place, and Gilliam says that's what he wants, too. Once outside, Franco leaves, and when Jonah finally opens the door, the partygoers rush in. Claude comes to investigate, but Jonah kills her, takes her gun, and fires at Franco until he runs out of bullets. Franco is still alive, so Nam instructs Jonah to retrieve the crown from Claude and the match from Curtis. Jonah rushes in and offers his hand, but Curtis is manipulated by Wilford into pushing Jonah away. Desperate, she grabs a fork and lifts her floor tile to see Timmy trying to power the engine. Wilford explains that spare parts have been in short supply over the years, so these days he uses his children as substitutes. Enraged, Curtis jumps at Wilford and punches him, then painfully grabs a tile to stop the motor gear and hands Jonah a match. Andy comes out of the compartment and goes to restart the engine while Jonah drives off. In just 1 second, Nam kills Franco Franco, Jonah sets fire to the crown, and Curtis cuts the engine again to let Timmy escape while fighting the pain of having his arm broken. The group then runs to hug each other, but as they do so, the crown explodes, blowing off the door, but at the same time a massive avalanche occurs, washing them onto the train. Cars began to fall one by one, and the train went off the tracks, its front end buried in snow, and finally came to a halt. Sometime later, Timmy and Jonah wake up in their car, surrounded by fire and the bodies of everyone else. When he went outside with the stolen pelt to observe the polar bear, he realized that it would not die from frostbite. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.